If you watch any kind of beauty, fashion, or lifestyle content, you've probably heard of creators going on brand trips, and odds are it wasn't always for good reason. From unfair itineraries, insane spending, and even accusations of racism, brand trips have been pretty messy. Brand trips have been a common staple in beauty brand marketing since the early 2010s, where a cosmetic brand gathers a group of popular influencers, takes them on a luxe vacation, all expense paid, in order to get those influencers to make posts about the brand and whatever product the brand is pushing at the time. And that sounds fine and dandy, right? Well, it's become pretty common for these brands to receive major backlash after doing these brand trips. And today we're going to go ahead and deep dive into brand trips, what exactly goes wrong with them, the pros and cons, and why brands even keep doing them regardless of all of the negative backlash so many of these trips have received. There have been so many different brands that have put on brand trips over the years that there's really no point in me trying to list them all out, but one brand in particular that has become pretty infamous for putting on brand trips is Tarte Cosmetics. Now, I'm not just here to shade Tarte in this video. I've actually used and enjoyed a lot of Tarte products. Shape Tape was actually my go-to concealer for a very long time, but they just happen to be the most popular brand when it comes to brand trips gone wrong. Gone right. I guess they've probably also had some successful ones, but more often than not, they are at the center of brand trip drama. Tarte has a large number of these brand trips under their belt, and they have taken influencers all over the world to places like Bora Bora, Turks and Caicos, Dubai, among other locations, and a lot of places even within the United States. So Tarte is pretty darn experienced in putting on these brand trips. So why is it that they are still, even recently, having so much negativity and backlash stem from these trips? In a 2023 brand trip to Turks and Caicos by Tarte, controversy was sparked when creator Shadi Sin, who happens to be a woman of color, was put in a room significantly smaller than some of the other white creators on the trip. She did claim that she was just happy to be there, but once viewers saw the size of her room compared to the other white creators, they did start asking questions about if she got the smaller room because of her race. Now, Tarte actually did respond to this with a data breakdown of all of the influencers invited, their races, and how rooms were divided. According to the data provided by Tarte, 41% of the creators on the Turks and Caicos trip were BIPOC creators, and within that, 19% were Black. By comparison, 7% of creators sent to their Dubai trip in January were Black. A Tarte representative tells Time that of the 9 large rooms available on the trip, nearly half of them were assigned to BIPOC creators. Now, we will actually go ahead and talk about the Dubai trip in a couple of minutes for some other reasons, but just for clarity, the Dubai trip did happen first in January of 2023, and this Turks and Caicos trip happened in April of 2023. So Tarte, by coming out with this actual data breakdown, is essentially saying, oh look, we actually invited more people of color, specifically Black people, to this Turks and Caicos trip than we did to Dubai, because in Dubai, like they said, only 7% of the invited influencers were Black, which, if I'm being honest, is kind of a wild thing to come out and say. Like, that's not a good percentage. This was not the only brand trip drama that Tarte faced in 2023. In fact, only a month after the Turks and Caicos trip, they also did a brand trip to the F1 race Grand Prix in Miami in May of 2023, where they also had very similar problems to what they experienced in Turks and Caicos. Influencer Bria Jones was originally planned to go to this F1 Miami trip, but she decided to cancel when she found out that she had a far different itinerary than some of the other influencers going. Her itinerary included her going home on Saturday and therefore missing the actual F1 Grand Prix race, which was happening on Sunday. You know, which is kind of what I would think would be the entire point of going to the F1 Grand Prix, but I guess Tarte didn't think so. So she felt as though she was being left out from the main event because she was, in fact, going to be missing the main event. Once again, this led to Tarte being heavily criticized for not giving all of the invited influencers the same experience, and there were even accusations once again of Tarte being racist towards the people of color invited and giving them a lesser experience. However, this time when Tarte came forward with an explanation/apology, it was not good. It was bad. Tarte founder and CEO Maureen Kelly actually made a TikTok video in which she is fully just getting ready, curling her hair, doing her makeup, and while doing that, she explains what actually happened with the F1 trip. Basically, they wanted to get as many influencers as possible to be able to have this F1 weekend experience and just didn't take into account that the actual Sunday F1 Grand Prix race is what people want to see. And not as many people are really as excited to see like the practice day on Sunday, I think it was. I'm not an F1 expert, okay? But I guess the way it worked is that there was a practice day on Saturday that some of the influencers were invited to, and then the actual race was on Sunday that the rest of the influencers were invited to. Wild that they didn't really take that into account. Like, I kind of see what Tarte was going for with this, like with getting the maximum number of people to have a weekend at the track as possible. But yeah, maybe not thought through very well. And also, why did we explain this in the form of a get ready with me video? When a brand is literally being accused of favoritism and racism, I feel like explaining what happened in the form of a get ready with me is just a little too casual and not taking it seriously enough. If she had just sat down to film a video, focusing on the video and nothing else, I think it would have been received a lot better. But we ended up going from criticizing the actual brand trip to now also criticizing the apology. So that didn't really go too well, now did it? Now in the video, Maureen Kelly did also go on to explain that after they heard about the fact that some of the influencers invited who were not originally planned to go to the Sunday race, Tarte actually did come forward and they bought a bunch more race tickets so anyone who wanted to attend the Sunday race could, which is good. I'm glad they stepped up and they did make that fix once they saw that people were upset about that, but by that point, I think it was too late and the damage had been done. Now, the really wild thing is that both of these two trips, the Turks and Caicos trip and the F1 Miami trip, happened only a couple of months after their Dubai January 2023 trip, which had major backlash, but for very different reasons. 2023 was not looking like a good year for Tarte and brand trips, okay? It was looking rough. Like, this is the first 5 months of the year, and we have 3 different brand trips with huge backlash and negative attention. The Dubai trip started with 50 influencers and their plus ones getting on first-class flights to Dubai. Now, a first-class flight from New York to Dubai on Emirates Airline can cost about $20,000 per person. So I don't really think I need to do the math on that to tell you that the flights for influencers and their plus ones alone is just an absurd cost to get the influencers to the location. $20,000 per person? Oh my God. Okay, we're spending big this trip, but just you wait, that's just the beginning of it. Then the influencers stayed at Ritz-Carlton villas in Dubai, which are very beautiful villas and hotel rooms, okay? Now, these hotel rooms are very expensive. They range around $1,000 per night depending on the room and the villa. If they were to only stay for 2 nights, which realistically they probably stayed more, but I don't know exactly how many days they stayed for. If we do the math, Tarte could have paid upwards of $100,000 just for the accommodations on this trip, which is insane. Imagine $100,000 on hotel rooms. Oh my lordy Lou, unfathomable to someone like me, okay? Now, on top of the first class flights and the luxury hotel rooms, there's also the factors of food, activities, free products, and gifts for attendees, which Tarte does usually absolutely spoil their guests with free clothes, jewelry, bags, and realistically anything that they could need on their trips. So overall, we don't know exactly how much money Tarte spent on this brand trip. They have never come forward and said, and honestly, why would they? They have no good reason to say how much money they spent, but a lot of people have gone ahead and made some estimates that this brand trip probably cost at least $1 million, and even more likely being a couple $1,000,000. So yeah, it was very pricey and very luxe, and it was quite the experience for those invited. And this trip, due to its extravagance, actually got a lot of criticism for just that. At a time when a lot of consumers are at home struggling to make ends meet, a lot of people unsure how they're gonna make rent payment. They can't justify the price of eggs. A lot of people at home just really didn't like to see this opulence and this extravagance on this trip. A lot of people at home complained that it felt very tone deaf, unrelatable, and out of touch, which, you know what, I really can't argue with. It is a lot. It doesn't always feel great seeing influencers go on these extremely luxurious vacations for free when a lot of us at home are struggling financially. It's not exactly a feel-good thing for a lot of us, you know? And exactly that led to a lot of conversation and criticism about brand trips and their spending of money. Now, Maureen Kelly did go ahead and make a statement about the Dubai trip in which she said, "Every day, brands make decisions about how to spend their marketing budgets. For some companies, that means a huge Super Bowl commercial or a multi-million-dollar contract with a famous athlete or musician," Kelly says. "We've never done traditional advertising, and instead we invest in building relationships and building up communities. We hope that as people see what we're doing together and what we're all about, they'll understand and have a stronger connection to Tarte." And I think this is a really interesting take, and it really does explain why Tarte continues to do brand trip after brand trip regardless of a lot of the negative backlash. It is a humongous marketing opportunity. Now, Tarte has also stated that they don't have posting requirements for the influencers invited. I have heard about other brand trips in which there is posting requirements for posting about the brand and the trip and stuff like that. But with Tarte, they don't have requirements, so if an influencer wants to go and not post about the trip, they don't have to. But I also think it is pretty much assumed that a lot of the influencers on that trip will make content about that trip, because for an influencer, content is their job, and having a free luxurious vacation seems like pretty good content for a lot of them, especially if they are like lifestyle, fashion, beauty influencers. So yeah, free content, they're gonna take it, they're gonna post it, and that is then free marketing or Tarte. And therefore, that could be a really good value in influencer marketing for that brand. And for some of these really, really popular influencers, a single sponsored post can be very expensive to buy. Like, I am talking tens of thousands of dollars sometimes for a single post. So instead of paying the influencer for a sponsored post, they send them on a luxurious vacation and they end up getting a lot of influencer marketing for free. Not for free because they did have to pay for like the whole trip, and as we discussed, they can be very expensive, but they're not paying for each individual post, and they could get who knows how many posts from a single influencer. Like, they could get a lot. They could get none, but they could also have influencers posting like multiple times a day, every day. So apparently it works out for them, you know? Now, also going back to Maureen Kelly's statement on why they do these brand trips, she also emphasizes building relationships and building up communities, which is also a huge marketing strategy for Tarte. If Tarte builds up a relationship with these influencers through bringing them on these luxurious vacations and spoiling them with gifts, these influencers then have a pretty good incentive to continue to speak very positively about the brand, whether that be talking about the brand in non-sponsored content, keeping any criticisms they have to themselves, or at least not going too harsh on criticism. And having positive relationships with influencers as a cosmetic company is huge for marketing. In recent times, social media has really become one of the best ways for brands to advertise to consumers. And influencer marketing is one of the best ways for brands to connect with potential consumers. And if that influencer's audience trusts them, they're even more likely to listen and buy whatever product that influencer is trying to promote to their viewers. In the end, I don't think brand trips are inherently bad. It's essentially building up a symbiotic relationship between the influencers and the brand in a way beyond just paying that influencer for a post, which in terms of marketing, I think is just the dream. It's also the dream if you happen to be one of these brands' employees who also gets to go on these super luxe vacations to wherever the brand is taking the influencers on whatever trip. Of course, it is still a work trip if you work for the brand, and therefore you probably have work responsibilities to do as well. But like, working from a beach in Bora Bora, not a bad time. Like, if I was working for one of these brands and I got to go on a trip to Turks and Caicos, I would be pretty hyped, okay? I would be like, hell yeah, let's go to this location next? I've always wanted to go to this location. I don't know. It seems like a sick deal for the people who work for these brands. And maybe that's a part of the reason why they do so many of them. Maybe Maureen Kelly just really likes to travel, okay? And this gives her a good reason to travel on Tarte's dime, you know? Just saying. Now, the more that these trips happen, the more that they are going to continue to be pretty heavily criticized. Even the most recent branch trip from Tarte, which took place only last month in January of 2025, was really heavily criticized for not being canceled, despite the fact that there were huge fires in LA going on at the same time that the trip took place. On top of that, it was also rumored that one of the nightly themes on this trip was Tarte on fire, which not exactly great when the city that a lot of those influencers live in was literally on fire. So people did not take that well. However, to be fair, we do also have to add in that Tarte has claimed that they have donated over $1 million to wildfire relief efforts, which obviously is amazing. I don't think there are tons of brands out there that can say they have donated so much money. So kudos for them for really helping out with that situation. I think that is fantastic. Now, going forward, if brands like Tarte really want their brand trips to be great marketing and they want to build up relationships with influencers and not be so heavily scrutinized, I really think these trips need to be reevaluated a little, or maybe a lot, okay? Maybe a lot. I think both consumers and influencers wouldn't have such a negative view on these trips if, for one thing, every invited influencer got the exact same treatment. They all got the same rooms, they all got the same experience. I know for some of these trips, the explanation for different rooms was that they stayed in a mansion where obviously not all of the rooms are going to be identical, which I get that, but I think they should put extra effort into making sure that they are staying at places where every influencer gets the same accommodations. That way there is no questioning whether or not someone was treated unfairly compared to others. So make it more fair, and I think people will be happier, okay? At least it'll be one less thing to critique the brand on, okay? And two, I think they should tone down the trips a little bit. Now, I get why Tarte wants these trips to be like incredibly luxurious so that they can win over the influencers, but I think we need to remember that we also need to think about winning over consumers as well, which I think is something that maybe we haven't been thinking about for these trips. At the end of the day, it is consumers who are funding the brand and therefore these trips with their purchases, so we should probably focus on them too. And while I do have to admit there are a lot of consumers who do like to consume and watch content that is super luxurious and it shows experiences that they themselves might never get the chance to experience, I also think right now, like I mentioned previously, that a lot of people at home just don't really want to see that right now. You know, when we can't afford a jug of milk, when I can't justify the price of a carton of eggs, I really don't care to see an influencer go on the world's most luxurious trip for free. You know, a lot of people aren't really into that right now. Understandably so, okay? I think if brands really try to tone down these trips and even give back to communities while doing the trips, overall consumers and influencers alike would just have a much better view on these trips in general. Like maybe if for every trip the brand could choose a charity or a cause to help support in their trip, that would make that brand and that trip be seen as a much more reasonable thing for consumers to want to see and support. And a lot of that money that they could maybe be spending on ultra luxurious experiences they could put towards a better use by helping people in need. I think obviously not only would that do a lot of good in the world, promoting a good cause, supporting a good cause, but also it would really help shift the perception of these trips and the brands in general. In the end, what do you think of brand trips? Do you think they are a waste of money? Do you think the brands should stop doing them altogether? Or do you think that they can be changed and be saved and that they can be a good thing? Overall, let me know about your opinion of brand trips down in the comments down below. And also, just as a reminder, I do stream over on Twitch, so if you are ever wanting to hang out and chat with me live, you can find me over on Twitch. The link is down below in my description. Also, if you have not yet subbed to my channel, I would really appreciate it. I make videos on all sorts of topics related to social media and pop culture and whatever I'm feeling passionate about at whatever time. And today it was brand trips. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!